So we're going to speak tonight about Rosh Hashana. And when we talk about Rosh Hashana, there's a little bit of confusion because on one hand, we're dipping the apples in the honey, and it's a sweet day, and we wish each other a sweet New Year, and we dress up for a yontiv, and we get haircuts, and we put on nice clothing, and there's a sweetness to it, and we wish each other, you should have a sweet New Year. And at the same time, it's a day of tremendous fear, of trepidation, of trembling. We're being judged. Our lives are on the line. If we're going to live or die is determined on this day. How much money we're going to make is determined on this day. If we have sickness, it's going to be determined on this day. The entire world is going through judgment. So it's a day of judgment, yet at the same time there seems to be an underlying tone in it of sweetness. So I'd like just to throw out a few questions to everybody and then present what I think gives us an approach to Rosh Hashanah that I think will help us very much on this day. Question number one that I have, perhaps the question we just mentioned. We know that everything that God does in this world is based on love. Hashem created the world because He loves us, and His involvement in the world is entirely based on love. So the question that we have, of course, is how is judgment a manifestation of God's love? Judgment is scary. It sounds oftentimes demanding. How is it a manifestation of love? Question number one. Question number two, I think we have to ask, is that we're being judged on what day? We're being judged on the first day of the new year. Now that's very interesting if you think about it, because imagine coming back to one semester now in the university, and the professor telling you that, guess what, your final exam is going to be now in September. Everything you learned last year, the final exam now is the beginning of the new semester. Or after a summer break, going back to the end of high school, guess what, everything we covered last spring, we're having the test on now. And we think about it, Hashem judges us. He's judging us when? He's judging us on the last year, or excuse me, I should say He's looking at the past year, and when is He judging us? He's judging us on the first day of the new year. Perhaps it would make more sense if Hashem were to judge us on the last day of the old year. Take a look at my track record, what did I do, what did I accomplish, and judge me on the past. Look at the last day of the last year. Hashem doesn't do that. Hashem waits for the first day of the new year and judges me on what I did in the past year. That seems to be a little bit unusual. Let's keep that question in mind as we progress tonight. A third question I think we have to ask, the mitzvah of shofar. Very interesting mitzvah. Apparently when we blow the shofar, we understand from the deeper sources that at that point where the shofar is blown in the synagogue, or where we are listening to the shofar for the fulfillment of the mitzvah, that point is where the judgment takes place. We're being judged right then in heaven. How it works, I don't know, but that's what we're told. When we blow shofar to fulfill the mitzvah, judgment takes place then. But it's very interesting. We run to the synagogue, we get up early to go to the synagogue, as we're supposed to blow the shofar. Which means we're running to be judged. Doesn't seem to make sense. To be judged by God, we know we have not been perfect. Definition of being human, the definition of free choice means we're not going to be perfect. It means our track record this past year has not been stellar. And yet we run to the synagogue in order to ask God to judge us. Sort of an interesting concept which we have to think about. And our rabbi is going further than that. They said when we run to the synagogue to blow the shofar, it's mamtik esadin, it sweetens the judgment. Blowing the shofar somehow makes the judgment even more sweet. So let's just think about these questions right now. Number one, why does God judge us for what we did in the past on the first day of the new year? Why are we asking God to judge us by running to the Beit HaKnesset, to the synagogue in the morning, and being having tremendous desire to blow that shofar, we know that's when judgment takes place. How is the whole day a manifestation of God's love? Judgment sounds scary, yet we know God's love filters behind it. So let's see if we can understand the day and perhaps answer these questions. What's it doing on the first day of the new year? And why do we run to the synagogue to be judged? To understand Rosh Hashana, we have to go back in time, and we have to travel, and we have to go to the first Rosh Hashana in human history. When was the first Rosh Hashana in human history? Well, it was in the Garden of Eden, and it was the day of the creation of Adam. Contrary to popular belief, Adam only made it in the Garden of Eden how long? He made it, how long was he there for? A few hours. He was there a few hours. Let me read to you what the Gemara says in Rosh Hashana, describing Adam's creation and what happened on that first day of creation. It says as follows. It says, "B'Rosh Hashana nivra Adam Arishon." The Talmud tells us that in Rosh Hashana, Adam was created. Sharishona ola b'makshava. On the first hour of the day, Hashem created the idea of Adam, of Adam. The idea came into existence. He prepared the idea. Second hour of creation, we're told that God discussed it with the angels. The famous verse, Nasa Adam b'tzalmenu. Let us make man. God is speaking to the angels. Should we do it or not? Discussing it. Why does he need to discuss it with the angels? Our sages tell us to teach us humility. Before you make great decisions in life, discuss it with somebody. Even if the person or the people or the being is lesser than you. Humility means discuss it with someone. God is teaching us that lesson. He's discussing it with the angels. That was the second hour. Third hour, Kones Afro, he gathered together the dirt. Bedalid Govlu, on the fourth hour of the day, Hashem took the dirt and he created a mound, so to speak. B'chamisha Rachamu, the fifth hour of the day, he began to mold it. But 6 asu golem. On the sixth hour of the day, the Vav, so God made a golem. He made a creature, a golem. Something like a figure, a person of a human being, but not yet a human being yet. U'b'zayin zoch bo neshama. Seventh hour of the day, God breathed the soul into Adam. And once the soul joined together with the body, now we have a human being, as we define the human being today. Soul together with body. B'ches, on the eighth hour of the day, he chnisu l'gan Eden. He enters into the Garden of Eden on the eighth hour of the day. Now listen to the time frame. The eighth hour of the day, God places Adam in the Garden of Eden. But tishis nitztava. On the ninth hour of the day, nitztava, he's commanded. He's given the command. What's the command? To enjoy every fruit of the garden, but one fruit, the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra lo techa mimenu. One thing don't do, that's the one command that he has. Bi asiri sarach, on the 10th hour of the day, he sinned. Bi echat esrei nidon, on the 11th hour of the day, judgment took place. B'shtein asru yotza b'dimos, and the 12th hour of the day, Adam Harishon was kicked out of the garden. From the point where he got his soul, which was the 8th hour of the day, to the point where, the 7th hour of the day, and became a human being, to the point where Adam was kicked out was the 12th hour. So it means there was basically a 5-hour tenure in the Garden of Eden. It was not a tremendously long period of time, but a very significant period of time.
In that time, I'm sorry, this was the same time, like hour today and hour that day is the same hour?
I believe so. I believe so.
The Shabbos didn't stay yet?
We not yet. Not yet. But we believe, yeah, it seems that it was, so maybe the din was, or maybe he went till after Shabbos. I'm not sure. But it sounds, according to the Gemara, it was a 5-hour period in the Garden of Eden. It was 5 hours. Now, we are talking about hours as we know them today. We can say, of course, we can certainly say, of course, before the creation of the sun and things like this, we can talk about as many hours as we need, 15 billion, whatever we want. And before the creation of Adam with his soul, we can even talk about whatever you want, evolutionary steps in creation. But once we talk about Adam, man, together with his soul, now we're talking about the human being as we know it, and human history has begun as we know it. And now we're talking 5007 as we say now. Let's analyze this for one moment. The Gemara says something very fascinating. It says when Adam is judged for eating of the tree, he's given a judgment, and he's expelled from the garden. But our rabbis say something very interesting. It doesn't say he was merely expelled. It says, Omdim lifnei hadin b'yom zeh, that Adam stood in front of God on this day. V'yotziu b'dimus. He went out with a fair, just, good statement, good judgment. Yotza b'dimus, it says. He went out with a judgment which somehow was, for the right word in English, equitable, fair, good. It was a good judgment. That's what it says. And Kodesh Baruch Hu says, just like I judged Adam on this day, and he left with such a good sentence, this is the day that I'm going to choose to judge my creation, on this day. Now I want to ask everybody a question. The question is like this. The Talmud tells us that Adam left with a good sentence, a good judgment. What was good about it? Yotza b'dimos, it says, but it's equitable, it was good, it was fair, it was charitable, something like that. It was a good judgment. What was good about it? Let's look at it. Let's compare and contrast. What was life like in the Garden of Eden? Well, in the Garden of Eden, number one, there was no death. Death is a function of the expulsion. In the Garden of Eden, God was visible. God was present. God wasn't concealed. You could have a relationship with God. You could see God. You know that God is there. What an amazing existence. We're looking forward to getting back to that. We're looking forward to getting back into the garden before the sin, when we can enjoy that relationship with God again. That was the relationship with God. An amazing relationship. Imagine that you're in the present. In the Garden of Eden, our sages tell us that the Yetzer Hara, the creative drive that we have to disconnect from God, was external to us, was on the outside. Once we ate from the tree, of course, we brought that external drive, that drive to disconnect from God on the inside, and that's all the problems that we have in life, in making decisions and discovering God. There's a drive inside of us that wants to disconnect. It's called the Yetzer Hara. In the Garden of Eden, it was outside. It was much easier to get to know God. So you had a place where you could have an intimate relationship with God. We didn't have the Yetzer Hara confusing our mind as we have it today. There's no death. Physical needs are prepared. It's all there. You can go in the Garden of Eden and pick your fruit off the tree. In fact, our sages tell us, one opinion is, of course, that the Eitz Hadas, the tree, wasn't a fruit tree. Different opinions. Some say it was an esrog, some say it was wine. One opinion said it was wheat. Not only that, it was a bread tree. It wasn't a wheat tree, it was a bread tree. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. When we make the blessing, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, God, we thank you for bringing forth bread from the earth. It's not true. We don't bring bread from the earth, do we? We bring forth wheat from the earth. And then the wheat you have to grind, and you have to winnow, and you have to bake, and you have to do all sorts of processes, 10 processes in fact, to make it from raw material to something edible. But how can we make the blessing, God, thank you for bringing forth the bread from the earth? So I said, just say we have to go back to the Garden of Eden. The bread grew from the trees. You can go to the trees, and you can actually pick off your bread. There was a challah tree. There was a bagel tree. There was a tandoori bread tree. There was that big Bukharian like umbrella bread that they eat. The problem with that used to break and crack. It was a big problem. So God had to make a special miracle. An angel used to have to catch it. It was a whole thing. Check the Midrash, Bukharian Midrash. But it was a very interesting existence, that all of our needs were prepared. What a beautiful existence. Now let's compare the expulsion. Well, we go into a world of death, number one. We go into a world where God is concealed. We go into a world where there's an eternal fight with our Yetzer Hara. And therefore we find disconnections from God in a lot of that we do. And not only that, we have to work for a living. In the Garden of Eden, you could enjoy your bread right from the tree. Outside the garden, b'zei sapecha tochel lechem. You have to work and eat your bread by the sweat of your brow. And that's why we have to get jobs, and we have to go to university. And we have to get training. And we have to worry about the stock market going up and down and up and down, right? It's all a function of the sin and the expulsion. But in the Garden of Eden, that didn't exist. Yet God says, I judged Adam on the 12th hour, the 11th hour. I expelled him on the 12th, but this sentence that I gave him was so good, so just, so sweet, so fair. I don't hear it as sweet and fair. It's cruel and harsh and cold and disconnective and demands work now where I'd rather be in the Beis Knesset learning and davening. I have to go out and worry about my parnasa, my livelihood. Where is there fairness in that? And yet our sages say, Adam left the demos. It was so fair. It was so good. What a beautiful sentence that God gave him.
Maybe because they didn't kill him.
Maybe because he survived. Maybe that he had life. That's interesting. It's interesting. But it seems to be saying more than that. It's something sweet in it. It's something good in it. Let's analyze it for a moment, and I think we'll see something very beautiful. Our rabbis look to understand what motivated Adam to sin. Why did he do such a thing? Here he is, created by God, just an hour or two before. He has one commandment, and he blows it. He eats. He eats of the tree. What motivated him? Why would he do such a thing? So, of course, we understand the story that the snake, and he was enticed, and there's a lot to it, of course, a lot to discuss. But I'd like to present something you might not have heard before. The Ari, the great Kabbalist, the Ari Zatzal, gives an approach based on the deeper works in Torah. And he says as follows. He says that Adam, first man, sinned for the sake of heaven. It was a chet l'shem shamayim. What does that mean? He sinned for the sake of heaven. It means like this. One can imagine, perhaps, if one is born the son of Bill Gates and grows up in a family where you have a credit line of 60 billion, 40 billion, whatever it is. One can imagine growing up in such a family. Imagine Bill Gates' son decides he wants to go into business. So supposing he succeeds in business, what will everybody say about him? Well, of course he'd succeed. Why not? He had his father's money, his father's capital behind him, and money makes money. It's easy to make money when you start with money. If Bill Gates' son wants to show that he is really a businessman and really has the acumen and the keenness and the talent to make it in business, you know what he has to say to his dad? He has to say, Dad, I don't want any of your money. I want you to cancel the credit card. I don't want access to my trust fund. I don't want your help. I want to do it myself. Because only if I can do it myself can I show that I really did it. Because if you're there behind me the whole time, people are going to look at me and say, yeah, of course you succeeded. You're Bill Gates' son. The son of the richest man in the world. I dare say that Adam Harishon, Adam, first man, had a similar challenge. His challenge was as follows. Adam loved Hashem. He was created by God. He was created by God only 2 hours before. He was intimate with Hashem. He had a beautiful, loving relationship with Hashem. But when you love somebody, or you love Hashem, what you want to do is you want to prove your love. You want to prove how much you can love God. So Adam understood something, the Zohar tells us. He understood that as long as he's in the Garden of Eden, it's too easy to love God. God, you're visible. I see you. Of course I'm not going to do anything wrong. You're present. Like, what's the test? What's the challenge? Not only that, Adam understood, as long as this spiritual force called the Yetzer Hara is outside of me, it's very easy to make correct decisions. How am I showing that I love you, God, and I'm choosing to follow you if you're present and I see you? And this Yetzer Hara, this inclination to disconnect from God, is outside of me. It's not internal. So Adam had a plan. His plan was, I'm going to eat of the tree. I'm going to eat and I'm going to absorb that knowledge of disconnection we call evil. I'm going to make it part and parcel of who I am. And then I'm going to show you something, God. I'm going to show you that even with the test of wanting not to get close to you, thoughts that take me away from you, thoughts that make it confusing, that make me rationalize, what should I do? In fact, those are the thoughts we have which are part and parcel of having the Yetzer Hara as we know. Should I get up in the morning? I need a little more sleep. It's cold outside, I can't go to daven. I'll be healthier if I sleep a little longer. In 10 more minutes, I'll be able to daven with more kavanah. I'm sure God wants me to skip going to shul this Shabbat because, He wants me to rest and be physically strong so I can serve Him during the week. Do we ever have thoughts like this? These confusing thoughts that make us wonder, what is the correct thing to do? We don't always know. And of course, because we have the internal Yetzer Hara. Adam said to God, it's too easy. I want to bring the Yetzer Hara inside of myself. And God, not only that, it's too easy being in the Garden of Eden. You're present. I see you. It's easy to serve you. It's easy to love you. It's easy to show people I can love you. I want to be in a situation where the challenge is intensified. So according to the Zohar, it says Adam knew what he was doing. It was a sin for God's sake. A chet l'shem shemayim. I'm going to drop a level to show on this lower level that I can discover you. And that's going to bring more sanctity to your name. Just like Bill Gates' son. I don't want any of your money, Dad. I want to do it myself. And that will show who I really am. God, I want to show you how much I can love you, but to show that I can love you, I can't do it in this current situation. It's too easy. I want a harder test. That's what the Zohar says. That's what the Ari says. Now, if you were God, what might you say to Adam after he ate of the tree? God understands that Adam ate of the tree in order to show his love for God. He wanted to drop a level to show that even at a lower level he could discover God and love God deeply. Right? If I were God, what would I have said? Adam, that was so beautiful of you. What a sweet sentiment. What a beautiful idea. You really love me so much. Oh, let me reward you for that. That was just so beautiful. What does God say? He says, Adam, minato. Adam, you're an apikoros. You don't have a munah. You don't have a munah. You don't have trust. That's what it says. Adam min hayo. He lacked trust. What does it mean he lacked trust? He was created by God 2 hours before. The whole reason he sinned was because he wanted to show how much he can love God. So how could it say that Adam lacked trust? How could that be? So of course we have to understand what is trust. When we talk about amunah in Hashem, what does that mean? Trust in God? Well, trust in God really means, the Brisker Rav said once, where reason ends, faith begins. Meaning, God, I want to understand everything about you. But there's always going to be something about you that I won't understand. And when I can no longer understand, I'm going to have to trust. Belief that God created the world, is it based on trust or knowledge? Dare say knowledge. We can study the facts, see perfection, realize there's a designer. Belief that God gave us the Torah, trust or knowledge? There's a knowledge. We had 6 million Babis and Zaydis, Saba and Safta standing there. Witnesses who gave us all the information. God, you're all about love. Aye. Crusades, expulsions, holocausts, homicide bombings. God, I thought you were about love. Now I have to trust. There's an aspect of you, Hashem, that I don't understand. Oh, now I have to have my amunah, my faith. And say, God, my mind can't understand it. But I'm going to have to trust. That's amunah. That's trust in God. God turns to Adam and he says to Adam Arishon, Adam, Minata, you lack emunah. Adam, you lack trust. What does that mean? It means that, Adam, you had a very beautiful plan. A plan in which you wanted to show how much you can love me. There's only one problem with that plan. What's that problem? It wasn't my plan. My plan was that you should be in the garden. My plan is that I should be visible to you. My plan was that the Yetzer Hara should be external from you. That was my plan. You had a wonderful plan, Adam. You're the smartest kid in the class. There's only one problem. Your test at that moment was to subordinate your brilliance to my brilliance. Your test was, are you going to follow my way, even though you don't understand it? Adam, you lack trust. What do you do with a guy who lacks trust? There's only one thing you could do with such a person. That's exactly what God does. He expels him from the garden. Why is that? Because the only way Adam will be able to fix up this lack of trusting Hashem is to be placed into a world now where God is going to be concealed. A world where you're going to have to find God behind current events. Find God behind the current events of your own life. A world where you're going to have to work to produce your bread. You have to put that seed in the ground, and you're going to have to water it, and you have to pray for rain, and pray for sunshine, and pray that all of the chemicals in the soil will take effect and produce that crop, and then pray that that crop will get to the harvest time without some sort of hurricane or whatever it might be. You're going to live now in a world where you're going to be forced to trust. Trust that which you can't see. So God knew exactly what he was doing. If Adam's sin, if Adam's mistake was he didn't trust God properly. He had a great idea. God, I want to sin for your sake. I want to lower my level. Perhaps he didn't appreciate what it meant to truly be out of the Garden of Eden. But he's saying, God, I want to lower my level to show I can love you. God turns back and says, Adam, you lacked trust. So now I have to put you in a world, you're going to have to learn to trust me. Because it's a world where you're not going to see me so clearly. And you're going to have to know that I'm there. And you're not going to understand everything. The Garden of Eden, you can understand it. You can talk to me. I'm right there. You'll see clearly my plan. Now you're going to be in a world where my plan is going to be concealed from you a little bit. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to trust. Your mind's not going to be able to understand it fully. You have to let your heart take over. That's what our sages say. Our sages say that Adam Arishon yotza b'dimos. He left the garden with the perfect judgment. A judgment that was sweet and good. It sounded so harsh and cruel. You know, a world where your food grows on trees to a world where you have to bring it out of the ground. But it wasn't harsh and cruel. Because of what was wrong with Adam. If what the lack was, the mistake was, the flaw was a lack of trust. The greatest way that God could fix it up is to put him in a world now where that's exactly what he has to do. To work on his emunah, to work on his trust. And that's what our sages say. He went forth from the garden with a sweet, just, perfect sentence. Now we learn something from this. If that's what Adam Harishon received on the first day, the first Rosh Hashana in human history, we learn about what the judgment is. Is the judgment a punishment for the past? Or is the judgment a look at the past in order to fix me up for the future? Well, what was it for Adam? Was he being punished for what he did? Or did God look at what he did and say, I have the perfect way to fix up the mistake? It's a look at the past year, to determine what we need for the future year. That's what it implies. It's as if you had a company. At the end of the year, what do? You go through the books, you go through the financial records in order to see how the company can grow and produce and become something greater in the upcoming year. You look at the past in order to determine what you need for the future. Now it's interesting, we should keep in mind, by the way, it's almost radical when I say it, but we have to know it. In this world, there's no such thing as punishment. It doesn't exist. Punishment does not exist. It's not a concept for this world. The consequence of our actions is something for the next world. There will be consequence. There has to be. Otherwise, life isn't meaningful. In this world, everything that God gives us is designed to help us fix up who we are. Everybody knows me, knows I love the language, the Hebrew language. And if we look at the one word we have for punishment, what's that word that we use? Onish. Even the word itself speaks to the concept. If I had a blackboard, I could demonstrate it easier, but just have to follow with me. Onish is 3 letters. Ayin, Nun, Shin. Ayin in Hebrew means what? An eye, right? To see. The word la'ayin means to look, to see, to perceive. Iyun means to investigate deeply. Iyun Torah. The idea of the eye, use it to look. The 2-letter root nash in Hebrew. What does it mean? 2-letter root nash. Interesting 2-letter root. Let's look at other words that share the 2-letter root. Well, let's see. We have a nesher, which means an eagle, a bald eagle. So we understand a nesher means that there was something that was on the head, a feather, and it fell off. Nash reish. Something fell off, something fell back off the head. That's what's called a nesher. Something bald eagle, something fell off the head. We have another word. Linasher. In Hebrew means to shear a sheep. To take a sheep and to cause the wool to fall off. You hear the word? Nasher. Nisher. Falls off. We have another word in last week's parsha actually. It said that if a person takes an axe and he wasn't careful to hammer on the axe head firmly and he brings it back, it's called Nashel Hagarzen. The falling back, Nashel Hagarzen of the axe. The 2-letter root Nash throughout the Hebrew language always means to fall back. Let's look at the word onish, which we translate as punishment. Let's understand what it really means. Ayin means use the eye, use your intellect, look, perceive, investigate. That what? Nash. That you fell. Onish. God brings pain to our life. He brings discomfort to our life. He brings situations which aren't always sweet in order that we should examine ourselves to realize we've fallen. But it's not like it's a slap on the wrist. It's a wake-up call. Look at yourself. Examine yourself. Look at where you need to go. That's the way God operates in this world. Onish. Ayin nash. Look at you fell. Get up. But it's never a punishment. It's never, this is the consequence of the action. It says this is a way to fix the action. This world is about tikkun, a correction. And God is a loving parent, and that's his goal, and that's his objective. Now, let's think for a moment. If on the day of judgment, Adam Rishon was given such a perfect judgment, the problem was a lack of trust, the fixing up is in a world where God conceals himself. That's the perfect way to fix it up. God looks at the past to decide what we need for the future. Let's answer some questions. Why then is Rosh Hashana on the first day of the new year and not the last day of the old year? Because if it was on the last day of old year, what? It would imply? It would imply punishment. This is, you did this right, you did that wrong, okay, you get this, you get that. But when God puts it on the first day of the new year, God is saying, I'm looking at the past to determine what you need to grow further, to fix yourself up. You know, we say in parenting, maybe you never heard this or maybe you never experienced it, you never give a child a potch for the past. Right? The kid does something wrong, you don't potch the kid for what they did in the past. That's not good parenting. What you do is you potch the child for the future. The potch is supposed to direct the child to improve, to correct himself. It's not a punishment, it's a direction. That's what God does. He puts the day of judgment on the first day of the new year to teach us that the whole reason I'm going to look at your past is to determine what you need for the future. Now, why do we get up early to ask God to judge us? What's that all about? Why do we get up early to ask God to judge us? Well, perhaps we get to understand it. judgment isn't punishment, but judgment is the way God looks at our lives to direct us for the future, then we can understand why we get up to ask God to judge us. And not only that, when we ask God to judge us, God says, you know what? I will sweeten the judgment. I'll give you one analogy. I think we'll get it clear, and we'll end with this. Imagine the following case. My little daughter, Shoshana, she's now 9, she's going to 4th grade. Imagine I get a letter home from the teacher. The teacher says, I need to speak to you. It's okay. Come into school. I speak to the teacher. Teacher says, you know, your daughter Shoshana has a big problem. I said, what is it? She's stealing. I'm catching her reaching into other kids' little knapsacks and taking out pencils and erasers and little notebooks. And I see her going to her knapsack and placing it in there. She has a problem with theft. Now, I as a parent, what's my obligation to respond to that? I have to do something about it. In fact, I might have to do something very harsh about it. I might have to speak to her and say, listen, I'm going to take something away from you so you can experience what it means to lose something. If you can't appreciate another child's property, maybe I have to take something away from you so you realize how much it hurts when you don't have what you want. I have to have a very strong, harsh judgment. True? But now imagine the following. Supposing I don't get a call from the teacher, but my little daughter comes up to me. She says to me, Abba, I need to talk to you. I said, what is it, Shoshana? She says, Abba, I have a problem. I said, what's the problem? Abba, I can't stop myself, but every time I see these little new erasers, I just have to take it. And every time I see another kid get this shiny new pen, I just want it for myself and I take it. And every time I see them get these stickers, I don't know what it is. I just I take it and put it in my knapsack. And I hate myself for it. And I can't believe I'm doing it. But I can't stop myself. Abba, you have to help me. Oh. Now what's my response? I'll say, okay, Shoshana, it's okay. Let's draw up a plan. You know what we're going to do? We're going to make a chart. And every day you're going to come from school and I'm going to ask you a question. Did you steal something? Did you take something? And when you say no, we're going to put a sticker on the chart. And if we could get 7 stickers across that chart, we're going to go out for ice cream together and we're going to buy you something special at Amazing Savings. Why was my reaction so much sweeter? Because she came to me. She realized, yeah, I want to grow. I want to change. I realize I have imperfections. Help me. Hashem says the same thing to us. When you get up early in the morning, you blow that shofar, yes, that's where judgment takes place. But when you come to me and say, I want to be judged because you understand the purpose of judgment is to find the way to bring that perfection into your own lives. So then God says, you know, I thought I had to be harsh with you. You didn't understand the value of money. I thought you had to lose money. Okay, you don't have to lose it. I'm just going to take a little bit away. You didn't understand the value of health. I was going to have to bring a sickness into your life to make you appreciate it. Now God could say, okay, let's do it more gently. Just something very, very subtle, something very light. When we come to God first, and we recognize the purpose of judgment is tikkun, is correction, then God could say, I could sweeten it. I can make it a much gentler, softer judgment. So my friends, this is what I wanted to share with you tonight. This understanding that Rosh Hashana is on the first day of the new year because we're looking at the past to decide where we're going in the future. We ask God to judge us because that sweetens the judgment. We're coming to Him first. And perhaps the most important point I want to stress is just like Adam HaRishon, first man, who received the first judgment on the first Rosh Hashana, the judgment was the perfect way to fix the sin. Everything that God gives us in our lives isn't punishment. It doesn't exist. It's the way God plans and directs to help us perfect the type of human being that He wants us to become. We shall have a sweet Rosh Hashana, everybody. Yes? What's that? Shofar. Well, the question was? or at the moment when we blow shofar, that's when the judgment takes place. But we say that we blow shofar at that point, so God judges us at that point. Why are we asking to be judged? We're asking to be judged because when we come to God and say, judge me, God, we're saying to God in essence, God, I realize I have imperfections. I realize I'm not perfect, but I want your help in perfecting me. It's like my little daughter coming to me and saying that she wants it. And in fact, the word shofar, the etymology of shofar means shipur, which means lishaper, which means, Hebrew speakers, to improve. God, improve me. That's what we're asking. God willing, we should all have a sweet judgment. We're very honored tonight now that we're going to hear from Rabbi Hartman.